Hey everybody, welcome to Alabama Care. Today we have Miss Jane Duer, and we're going to be talking about the Alabama Department of Mental Health Infant and Early Childhood Special Programs. I'd like to hand it over to you, Miss Duer, if you would introduce yourself.
Sure. I am Jane Duer, and I have worked for the Department of Mental Health for 9 years in November. I worked at Children's Hospital of Alabama for 21 years prior to that. So I'm a long-term committed employee when I start a job. And I am the director of the Office of Infant and Early Childhood Special Programs. That is actually a fairly new title as of 2019. I was hired in 2012 to be the early intervention coordinator for the department, and did that from 2012 to 2019 when this office was opened to add infant and early childhood mental health services to what we were doing with early intervention. And so we became a more all-encompassing Office of Infant and Early Childhood Special Programs, which now includes early intervention and infant and early childhood mental health.
Oh, that's awesome. So just giving you a heads up, I'm gonna pull up the broadcast on my phone so I can check to see if anybody has questions or anything. Awesome. So
okay.
Just giving you a heads up, I'm gonna I'm sorry.
And I'm looking at you, right?
Yeah. So, are you originally from Alabama?
Yes, I was born in Morgan County in North Alabama, and my family traveled, or my father changed jobs a lot, so we moved back and forth between North Alabama and the suburbs of Atlanta quite a bit throughout my childhood. And then I graduated from high school in Northeast Atlanta, and then went to Auburn University to school. So I've been back in Alabama since 1984.
Okay. So back to your work history. What you said, you worked at Children's for 21 years? Mm-hmm. That is so cool. We've spent a lot of time at Children's with my daughter, and we love that place.
Oh, I loved it too.
I mean, we don't love.
If you've got to be at a hospital, yeah, it's a good hospital to be.
Yeah, the people that work there just make it wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good place.
So you work with a lot of, like, it seems like you've always been around like special needs kids and children and stuff like that. Was there anything that inspired you to get into this line of work?
Yes. So I worked directly with children, infants and toddlers with special needs for most of my career at Children's Hospital, birth to 3 with disabilities. And really, when I look back at my, what inspired me to go into this field, because I've done a lot of soul searching about that over the years. I think 2 or 3 events occurred. The first one was that I became an aunt. Well, I became an aunt at the age of 11 months because I have older brothers and sisters, but one of my nephews was born when I was 6, and he had significant disabilities, blind, deaf, and cerebral palsy. And he only lived to be 4. And so I was around 10, 11 when he passed away. But I have very vivid memories of him. I remember taking care of him as a young child. My sister was there, but I would play doctor, pretend to put a cuff on his hand, on his arm, or listen to his heart, or I don't know. I just always played, taking care of him. And then when I was a little bit older, I started receiving medical treatment for a medical condition I was diagnosed with as a child. And I spent a lot of time in Children's Hospital, actually here in Birmingham, and then other hospitals as well in other parts of the country. And so being in a hospital with people that work with children with healthcare needs was like being at home, because I grew up doing that. And so that was not a foreign thought to me. I didn't want to go into the medical field. I knew that because, well, for one thing, I was not very good at science and math. So, and I didn't want to do things. I just didn't want to do that kind of work with children.
Right.
But when I was in college at Auburn, I was an undergrad, I needed to establish residency in Alabama because I came from the Atlanta area. And so I found out about a summer job at Camp Asca, which is a camp for children and adults with disabilities. And I worked there 2 summers and loved it. I found that I had a gift for working with people with disabilities. I typically really loved working with the younger children, but I loved working with the adults as well. And happened to learn about early childhood special ed in my senior year of undergrad, and found out that I could get a master's degree in education and get certification in early childhood. Well, at the time, this was in the 80s, late 80s, it was called Early Childhood Education for the Handicapped, but it's now Early Childhood Special Education. So that's what I did. I pursued that degree and worked mostly in early intervention, birth to 3. I was certified as a teacher to work with children up to age 8, but I didn't really want to work in a classroom. I worked a little bit in a classroom in the beginning of my career, but my goal was to work in early intervention because I wanted to help parents. I wanted to provide parent support and education more than I wanted to work directly with the young children. So
I think that is awesome. What you do for me as a parent of a child with special needs, like that is so important. I remember like when my daughter was first diagnosed, and it's such a scary time, and usually when you're talking to people about it or your friends or whoever, it seems like people like they're kind of scared for you and kind of pity you. So it's nice for us parents when we meet people like y'all, and like you mentioned earlier about children's, like it wasn't foreign, and so like for y'all, our situations, like it's normal to y'all, so it's comforting for us.
I think that's a great point. The Children's Hospital normalized, the staff at Children's Hospital normalized what parents were experiencing and children were experiencing. And it was the same for Camp Asca. Camp Asca was normalizing for those children and adults. And I liked being with people that could normalize it and welcome and support people.
Yes, so that is wonderful. And it's a whole new world. Like I never knew it was there, but now that I'm here in it, like there's some really amazing people.
Oh, absolutely.
So could you tell us, so you're the director of the infant and early childhood special programs. Could you tell us a little more about what that consists of and what services you offer?
Sure. So both, early intervention has been a part of the Department of Mental Health for as long as EI has been a thing in Alabama, so the late 80s, early 90s. The Department of Mental Health has been a partner with the Alabama Department of Rehab Services, which is the lead agency for early intervention in Alabama. So EI, like I said, is what I came into this job, originally came to the state to do. And they serve, early intervention serves children birth to 3 up till their 3rd birthday, as you know, having a child in EI at one time, with disabilities, developmental delays. Eligibility in Alabama is that they have a 25% delay in one or more areas of development, or a medical condition that we know likely can cause a delay. So the delay doesn't have to be present at the time if there's medical documentation saying they have a diagnosis. And those services are provided in the home or where the child lives and stays and has their relationships. So it could be child care setting, could be early in the home. There are 8 core values of the Alabama Early Intervention System, which of course, like I said, we're part of that Alabama Early Intervention System. And that is that they're family-centered, developmentally appropriate, they're individualized, provided in the natural environment, as I just said. The focus is on training and equipping the parent or caregiver. It's collaborative, routines-based, and evidence-based. So the providers of those services, DMH contracts with 23 community early intervention programs, and the programs in the community are who provides the services and strives to meet those core values. The services that they provide address those core values or embody those core values. And so early intervention can be all children in early intervention get service coordination services, which is someone that is the the main contact and the person that helps to make sure the family gets what they need, and to identify what the family needs and the child needs. And then there's services such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language therapy, special instruction. There's 17 services that a child could be eligible to receive through early intervention. Those are the primary ones that are provided to most families. And so then in 2019, we added to early intervention the infant and early childhood mental health services. And both EI and infant early childhood mental health, before I talk about those services, address Alabama's youngest children and their families and the other adults that are caring for them. And so we know that infants and early and young children develop an environment of relationships, and we believe that every child should have the opportunity to start from the beginning to reach their full potential in not just relationships, but in healthy relationships. So that kind of is where the infant early childhood mental health side of things comes in. We, in both EI and infant early childhood mental health, we support the adults in those relationships so that children have a better chance of success and social emotional wellness. So infant early childhood mental health came about in 2015. We didn't become a service within DMH until 2019, but in 2015, DMH received a federal grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA for short, and I was the lead principal investigator on that grant. And the focus of the grant was called Project Launch, and the focus was to identify and address gaps in services specifically around social emotional development and infant early childhood mental health. And so for 5 years we worked in West Alabama in Tuscaloosa County to provide services around those things. And then simultaneously we worked to build infrastructure in the state level and start creating some policies and identifying funding to we didn't want to turn the lights off in 2019 on these services. And we wanted to expand them and sustain them. So my colleagues and I, with Project Launch, we put together a proposal, and so I submitted it to the commissioner at the time of the Department of Mental Health, Lynn Bashir, and requested funding for when Project Launch ended in 2019, that DMH would take over providing these services and identifying more and more what needed to be done. Alabama did not have a formal system at the state level for addressing children birth to five's social, emotional, mental well-being. And there were people providing some services here and there for children birth to three, certainly. I'm not saying that we created it from scratch, but there wasn't a coordinated effort, and there wasn't a statewide effort, and we didn't have an infant and early childhood mental health association in the state. And so that was something that my colleagues and I saw the need for, and that was created through the Alabama Partnership for Children Association for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health in 2017. And so 2019, DMH started providing these services. And what infant and early childhood mental health is, because a lot of people want to know that, I think a lot of people think just mental health in general. For some reason, there's a stigma about mental health, but we all have mental health.
Yeah.
It's I've always said it's a neutral term, just like physical health is a neutral term. We don't say someone is physically ill, or we don't go there when we say physical health. But when we say mental health, we often go to mental illness. And I don't understand that. I've never understood why that is. Mental health, we are born with mental health. What happens to us in early childhood can positively or negatively impact our mental health and well-being, right? So infant and early childhood mental health is addressing the social, emotional, and mental wellness of the child and the family and all the adults that support them. So I'm going to take a swig of water real quick because my mouth's getting dry.
Oh, you're fine. And I don't want to interrupt you. You can pick back up. But I was thinking, like, you have done a lot. You're doing a good job. But yeah, 0 to 5, like, so much is going on developmentally. Wow, so that's super important. So
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, and the foundation for mental wellness, we know, well, we know everything. Development, if we don't get to development in the first 3 years of life, the children will be more likely to be developmentally delayed. The disabilities can be more severe if early intervention doesn't happen. So that's one of the reasons early intervention is so vital and so important. And then with mental health, if relationships are not formed in a healthy way in those first few years, that can be detrimental.
Right.
You know, an example, a lot of people think, well, if they hear the words preschool expulsion, for instance, some people have never heard of that.
I've never heard of that.
Okay. How can a preschooler be expelled, right? You think of high school expulsion or, you know, middle school expulsion. Well, preschool children may have social emotional issues because of trauma, because of
And they can't help that.
They can't help that. They may have they may not be a bad kid. Most kids are not bad kids, but there's environmental factors. There could be something physiological. There could be something that's diagnosed down the road. But for a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, it could just be the adults in their world may not have all the tools they need to support that child's needs. You and I were talking before we started about the fact that sometimes we act out of as adults, our behavior looks like we're angry, but at the root of that anger can be fear.
Right.
And sometimes we're afraid. Well, it's the same with a child. A child's acting out is the tip of the iceberg. What is going on below the tip, right? And so it's important to address those things early. If a child is expelled from 3 to 5-year-old programs, they may have self-esteem issues. I mean, you think about a child that's in childcare setting and their behavior allegedly gets them kicked out. The childcare staff say, we can't deal with Billy anymore. He's throwing chairs at the class. It's not safe. Or even if it's not a violence, we can't deal with his tantrums anymore, whatever. So Billy gets pulled. Mom and dad have to pull him from the class, and then they've got to find more childcare. Well, that impacts mom and dad. And mom and dad may have probably have some own issues going on, and they may start saying, Billy, if you would just be better, if you would just be a better kid, you'd be in daycare still, and we could work. Well, we can't work because you can't act right.
Yeah, they're blaming the child.
Well, what is that going to do to that child's self-esteem? Right? And so then the child might get put in another childcare setting, and then that childcare doesn't work out. And then so on and so on. The child's going to start thinking it's himself, and as he gets older and matures, school might be problems. He may have academic problems. He may be a late reader. He may be unable to sit still in the classroom because he's never learned those skills early on. And so we know that preschool expulsion can lead to academic problems later down the road.
Yeah, and even further, like when they're an adult.
It can lead to juvenile delinquency. It can lead to not graduating from high school, and then it can lead to incarceration.
Right.
There's a lot of literature out there about the nursery to prison pipeline, and it's very real. So our work in our office is to address that birth to 5.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, it's really not about diagnosing. We don't diagnose. Our folks don't diagnose. What we do is we address the issues. And there may not, infant and early childhood mental health is there's a continuum of services of promotion, prevention, and intervention if needed. And so it's an indirect service that we provide. None of my staff are providing mental health therapy. We don't open a door and have people come in for sessions. That's not what we're doing. Our infant and early childhood mental health consultants that are employed by this office, there's 8 of them, and they are all master's level mental health clinicians, but they're not practicing clinical therapy. They're using their expertise in mental health, clinical mental health, plus all of the training that we provide them within our office through a collaborative partnership with the department. The Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education has funded almost all of the workforce capacity building that we've had in the last 2 years through a preschool development grant for birth to 5. And so through specialized training in infant early childhood mental health topics and fields of practice, research-based practices, our consultants then go out into the field and support first-class pre-K teachers, which is Alabama's publicly funded 4-year-old pre-K. So there's a very systematic process. They get the referrals through the pre-K system. Dallas Rabig is the state infant early childhood mental health coordinator with the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education, and we work in very close partnership, and she facilitates that sector of consultation. It's the consultants that work for DMH, but she helps guide that referral process and the services, and then they help teachers and coaches in the first class pre-K classroom to address any concerns, not just about the children, but about they help support the teachers as well and the coaches, because there's high rates of burnout and compassion fatigue and secondary stress, secondary traumatic stress that those teachers, those providers experience. And if they are not at their best, they can't give their best to the children.
Yeah.
And so that's what the work of infant early childhood mental health is all about. Then the other areas they work in are, one of the consultants works with a federal grant that I have that is working with rural pediatricians to, along with other mental health team members. It's actually not an early childhood grant. We work with Children's Behavioral Health. I'm back at Children's Hospital with a contract with those people. And they're working with rural pediatricians to get them mental health services to the pediatricians. And one of the mental health team members is an infant early childhood mental health consultant. And then we have a couple of pilots. We're doing a pilot with the Alethea House in Huntsville, where a consultant is working with the staff of a women's treatment facility for substance abuse disorder. So they are working with women who have just had babies but are getting drug or alcohol substance abuse treatment, helping them understand child development and relationships and the importance of relationships with that baby and toddler and preschooler, as well as working with the staff to help them understand the importance of the relationship with the child. And then we have an early intervention pilot. We have 2 programs currently. The one that your daughter went to actually is in our pilot, getting infant and early childhood mental health consultation to early intervention providers to help strengthen their knowledge about social emotional development and relationships and helping build their capacity to address these kinds of issues.
Something that you mentioned that I wanted to ask, well, like everything you were saying, like it's all so great, but you mentioned something about the tools to help parents. Like I feel like, I feel like most people, maybe they were raised a certain way and they don't know any better and they do the best they can.
Right.
Like I feel like I believe that. People just do the best they can.
Absolutely.
But when you were talking about like tools, like how do y'all go about?
So just providing families and providers that deliver the services. Strategies.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm
like how we'll have like a plan or something.
Yeah, I mean it's not. I mean there's some curriculum that could be used or formal guidelines that the consultants might use, but it's individualized. So if a teacher is having trouble with her classroom, the consultant will obviously assess and discuss and observe and try to figure out, and then they work together to solve it. So it's not the infant early childhood mental health consultant does not go in as the expert, because she's not the expert on that child or even child development for those children in that classroom. But she does have a lens of infant early childhood mental health that is unique, that she can bring to, and I'm saying she because all of our consultants happen to be females at this time, but that she can bring to the teacher or the EI provider or the Alethea House staff that can say, I wonder if you try this.
Yeah, right.
How this would work.
Right.
So they work together, and the provider can give feedback to the consultant on what's working, what's not working, and they tweak it together.
Yeah.
So it's tools in that it's things that they may not know, that the providers or parents may not know, haven't tried, don't know, have no way of knowing to try.
And sometimes it's all that takes. Like it's all it takes. Like if you're in the position and you're so overwhelmed and you don't know what else to do, and then somebody with an outside perspective says, hey, try this.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, well, I didn't think of that.
And sometimes that can happen with just a friend, right?
Right,
I mean, I know personally, if I've had an issue and I'm like, just dumbfounded about how to solve it. And I'm sharing it with a colleague or a friend. They're like, well, I had that happen and I tried blah, 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 blah. And I think, oh, that might work. So any of us give each other tools, right? We all, but this is a specific, it's just a specific set of eyes, ears, brain, with a different lens to brain. Yeah. And one thing that we haven't talked about that I did want to say is that I am a parent of a child with special needs, and I shared that before, but we hadn't really talked about it. So I think that lens comes into my work a lot because I do know what it's like to be the parent on the other side.
Right.
Like, my child is 29 now. He's not a child anymore. And he actually told me, we all went on vacation together a couple weeks ago, and he goes, "Stop momming me." And I said, "I will never be able to stop momming you. I'm sorry. You'll be 50, and if I'm still alive, I'll still be momming you." But as a parent of a child with special needs, it helped me, kind of what we were talking about before about fear and anger. It helped me to experience that side of it when he was growing up he had an IEP, individualized education plan, from the time we adopted him when he was almost 3. So as soon as he turned 3, I got him into preschool special ed. And so he had an IEP all of his life up until he was 19. He graduated. He walked at 18 and then got his diploma at 19. Long story. But anyway, one of the things that I would get so frustrated about at IEP meetings would be they were just talking about, well, he can't do this and he can't do that, and I don't know if he'll be able to do that, and he can't sit still in the classroom, and he's, and all the things that he can't, and I would just kind of get angry because they couldn't come up with a solution that I felt met his needs. Right. I mean, they did, but at that immediately moment, I was feeling frustrated that we couldn't all get on the same page.
Yeah, and you're his mom. You don't want to hear other people saying what he can't do.
Right, and even if they were saying what he can do, but it wasn't what I thought was best for him.
Right.
Like, the plan was to have this service or that service, or him go to this, or this teacher come to him, or whatever. There'd be times when I didn't agree with it, and I would just get angry. And, I think a lot of times I just wanted them to see the boy that I saw, and to love him, and to teach him what he needed to know to be able to get a job someday, to read initially, to read, to get a job and maybe live independently. And I didn't feel like that was happening sometimes, and I would get angry. And even then I didn't realize it. It's looking back that I realized, you know what, Jane, you weren't angry, you were afraid. And so bringing that perspective into my work, whether it's with, I don't work directly with families anymore. I don't work directly with even providers. I work with the staff that work with those people. But trying to remember that feeling, and that when people lose their temper, that may be what's going on, or we just don't know what people are carrying with them.
Right. So that's the second time today that you've given me chills. But yeah, that's such a good quality that you have in your position for you to, you were in the parent's shoes too. So I think that's wonderful. Back about the early intervention services. I love that it's like parent focused, and you're like training the parents and stuff like that, because they're the ones with the kid most.
Yes.
Or the or like daycares or whoever, just whoever's going to be with the kid the most. So after the child is eligible, I think you talked about like what services they received, like what the next step is. They'll have, I think you said, like a provider
service coordinator is assigned to a family. Actually, that happens before the child's determined eligible. The service coordinator leads that effort. Well, I take that back. In some parts of the state, a district early intervention office determines eligibility and then assigns to a program and a service coordinator. So every family may have a little different experience with that. But ultimately, a service coordinator is assigned to a family, and then the family engages with the service coordinator on what's called a routines-based interview, which helps. The goal of early intervention is not to I'm going to take the word just out, is not to fix the child or fix the things that he or she can't do. It's to support the family in the everyday experiences that they have with the child. So an example, if a 18-month-old is not walking yet,
Right.
by 18 months, most typically developing children are walking by 15 to 18 months. That's usually the latest that they walk. Well, if a child's not walking and the parent says, I want Susie Q to walk, that is not the goal. The goal is not Susie Q will walk. The goal is, why do you need Susie Q to walk? I mean, obviously she's at the age where they expect her to walk,
Yeah.
but how would that help? How would that, what would help? What would that be like if she could walk? Well, and this mom might be pregnant and due any day. And she says, oh my gosh, I just keep thinking about when this baby comes and Susie Q can't walk and I'm gonna be carrying this baby and I'm gonna have two babies, I'm gonna have a big old toddler and a little baby. So the functional routines-based approach that Alabama's early intervention system uses is that we get Susie Q walking so that mama can, so that she can walk independently and mama doesn't have to carry her with the newborn baby.
Yeah, so that's how it's like family based.
It's family focused, family driven. It's not just what in the old days when I first started out in EI, we would evaluate the children and whatever the children couldn't do on a test is what the goals were. He can't stack 6 blocks. Okay, well, that's going to be a goal. Well, most parents don't care if their 2-year-old can stack 6 blocks. They need them to be able to pick up their Cheerios and put them in their mouth or clean up their food after they've, at 2, be able to help, do some things. So, so it's not based on deficits. It's based on what does this parent want? What are their dreams and goals for their child for the next 6 months? Because it's also not a long-term goal. It's a 6-month to a year goal, usually 6 months. So, so it is very family involved. And the family, I had a long time ago when I was doing EI, I had a family that didn't have any concerns about their baby that couldn't see. Or I didn't think, I'm not an ophthalmologist, but my developmental testing showed some red flags that she wasn't tracking, she wasn't doing some things. Well, their goal was for her to sit up and to crawl. And they didn't think that she should be seeing or doing the things with her eyes that, I thought she should be. And so we didn't write a goal for getting a vision exam, referring her to a doctor for a vision exam, not on that first day. But as the therapist that worked with that family and the service coordinator that worked with that family developed a relationship and trust, going back to even though this is EI, it's how it overlaps, right? If you have trusting relationships, you can accomplish a lot more. So within a few months, very few months, or weeks even maybe, it's been a long time, I don't remember, that family was open to having an ophthalmologist. And the child ended up getting glasses at, 15 months old or whatever. So, but you have to work, the family is not going to, if they don't value it, they're not going to work toward it. And it doesn't matter how much the EI team feels something needs to happen, that's not as important as what do you, mama, need to happen and daddy need to happen. So
I love that. I love that. So you have mentioned a couple times about collaborative partnerships. Do you want to go into that a little more?
Oh, it's what everything that we do is about, EI and infant and early childhood mental health. Early intervention is collaboration at the state level because the Department of Rehab Services is the lead agency and they contract with the Department of Mental Health, who then contracts with the local community programs. So there's collaboration from ADRS to ADMH to the local programs. And then they also contract with the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. So there's 3 state agencies involved in the delivery of EI services. Then at the child and family level, there's collaboration in EI around service coordination and service provision, so, and the family. So there's an EI team involved with each child that's collaborative. And then on the infant and early childhood mental health side, we work very closely with the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education. Like I said, we collaborate on everything related to infant and early childhood mental health with them. They fund some of the services, we fund some of the services. And then we also collaborate with the Alabama Partnership for Children and First 5 Alabama, which is, like I mentioned before, the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Association. We're all in collaboration and partnership to further the infant and early childhood mental health services in the state. And there's other agencies that we collaborate with as well, but those are the 2 big ones. So.
Yeah. So cool. Also, what you mentioned about the consultant positions, you did talk some about like what their purpose is and what they'll be doing. But could you remind me?
Yeah, sure. So they are, there are more than, we have 8 infant early child mental health consultants at the Department of Mental Health. Those are the ones that I'm responsible for, their positions and the training that they get. There are also infant early child and mental health consultants with the Alabama Partnership for Children through a contract with, I'm sorry, all these acronyms and names. Yeah. They contract with the Alabama Department of Human Resources, DHR, commonly known as, in their child care development grant. The DHR has, everybody knows DHR has the child welfare and, you know, foster care and all that, but they also oversee the child care licensing and the quality improvement in child care settings, child care programs. So they contract with APC, Alabama Partnership for Children. They've given them money to hire 6 infant early childhood mental health consultants to serve specifically licensed child care programs.
So is this something that y'all came up with, that y'all saw a need?
The consultants consultation. Well, the infant early childhood mental health consultation is a field, just like teachers are a field or anything else is a field, nationally known. And in many states, they've been doing it for 20 years. We just didn't have it in Alabama until the Project Launch grant in 2015. So we hired the first 2 through Project Launch to serve West Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They were housed in Tuscaloosa, and that's how this all got started. Was those 2 consultants worked, with some home visiting programs and first class pre-K and early intervention and Head Start, early Head Start, I believe. For the 5 years that we had that grant. And then we saw the benefit of this, and we also got Dallas Raybig, I'm gonna say her name, I'll make sure she watches this. She is like I said before, the state infant early childhood mental health coordinator. She's a mental health clinician and has done consultation herself in Colorado. She had been working in Colorado for 3 years and learning all about this field because she'd been doing it. And Colorado is one of the states that leads the way, one of many that leads the way with this field of work. And so she learned from them what it was. Yeah. And when we were hiring an infant early childhood mental health consultant for Project Launch in 2015, she interviewed, and back then via Skype. We didn't have Zoom then, or at least I didn't know about Zoom then. We brought her back to Alabama. She's from Alabama, but she had been living in Colorado. She and her husband had been living in Colorado. So she came back to Alabama and was our first infant early childhood mental health consultant. And then we hired a second one to work with her. But very soon, within just months of her being there, we realized that we needed her to help with systems development, bigger than just providing that service in Tuscaloosa. So she helped us learn what infant early childhood mental health consultation could be, and connected us with people. And at the same time, the director of the Alabama Partnership for Children, Gail Pygott, she was able to get a Kellogg Foundation grant to start the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Association. All of that kind of happened simultaneously in 2017. That position, that Dallas became a state coordinator, and then we got the association. So consultation has been around for a long time, but we just started really. And there's another there's a Head Start program, early Head Start program in North Alabama that does consultation. It looks a little different than what we're doing, but it's still the same kind of support to teachers and that kind of thing. And we collaborate with them and work with them very closely now. But these consultants are, I think I've explained, they are trained and have expertise to support families, but primarily infant and early care providers. They do some work with families, but the primary target is the providers of care around social, emotional, behavioral, relationship concerns, as well as supporting the adult with their own social, emotional, mental wellness, and reflective practices. And they do not provide direct clinical mental health therapy. They help adults build their own capacity to address the children's social, emotional needs, and help them to learn when to recognize when additional support might be needed, like mental health clinicians in the community. And then that's the other thing that our system of care is building, is we're trying to increase the capacity of mental health providers. So if you have a child that's we'll follow the child that was in the preschool that got kicked out twice or whatever, and somebody identifies, there might be something going on with him, more than just environmental or could be just environmental. But, well, the consultant, it's not his or her job to do diagnosing and treatment. They're just supporting you, the teacher, that's working with this child, right, on ways that might help.
Right.
So we need to be able to refer to the community for a mental health clinician to maybe evaluate and diagnose, or maybe not diagnose, but determine if there is a diagnosis and treatment that child needs. Well, in Alabama, our mental health providers, there's not very many that serve children under 5 for various reasons. Some of it is they're not trained to serve children with mental health needs under 5. Some is billing. Either they didn't think they could bill for children under 5. They don't know how to bill for children under 5. They don't know the evidence-based practices or the best treatment options for children under 5. And children under 5, typically, we promote something called child-parent psychotherapy, or CPP, because it is a trauma-based, and it works with the parent and the child. It's a dyadic treatment. So you're not just working with a 2-year-old in a chair. You're working with mom and the 2-year-old.
Right.
And because children, as I said in the beginning, children learn and grow and develop through relationships and in their environment. They're not in isolation.
Right.
If you treat a child, you got to work with the family. Right. So we're trying to build capacity with mental health clinicians in the state as well to get them the training they need, and also working with Medicaid to identify billing codes that can be used and that kind of thing. So
I think that is so important. Like when you think about kids from 0 to 5, you think about babies and toys and games. Everything's fun. It's childhood.
Sure.
But not every child, they could have totally different circumstances. Exactly. So services to help them out, that's, that's so important.
Yeah.
So I got the consultants confused with the next thing I wanted to ask you about.
Oh, okay.
I came across this, the infant or early childhood mental health endorsement credential.
Yes.
So I had never heard of that, and I thought it was really interesting. And is it offered? Can it be offered to like teachers in the school, or is it just for people in the mental health?
There's 4 categories that can be attained, and that goes back. I keep saying it. First 5 Alabama. That's the association. That's where the endorsement comes through. And I did send Alex, I guess is who I was communicating with. I sent some links, and there's a link. Yeah, there's a link to First 5 Alabama, which is what the endorsement comes through, is First 5 Alabama. And endorsement is credentialing of professionals who work with or on behalf of very young children, birth to 5, birth to 6, some things go into 6, and want to be recognized as having that expertise. Endorsement is through, we are an affiliate, Alabama's an affiliate of the Alliance for the Advancement of Infant Mental Health, and we use the competencies and the standards that they have authorized to be used. So it's not a degree, it's not a certificate, it's not, it's a credential.
Okay.
So for instance, I'm infant mental health endorsed in policy. I'm not infant mental health endorsed in clinical because I'm not a clinical person. But I had enough work experience in birth to 5 or birth to 3, because birth to 3 is the infant. Birth to 3, and I had the degrees and I had enough in-services and training, additional training over the last 30 years of my career to qualify to sit for an exam in infant mental health policy endorsement. And so I became endorsed in December. There's a category that's for, and I did not make myself cheat sheet notes on this, so I have to work from my brain here. There's 4 categories, and I'm category 4 is the policy, and policy is not only one in category 4. There's a clinical. I'm a mentor, policy mentor, so there's a clinical mentor and an academic faculty mentor as well, and that's category 4. And then there's the infant or early childhood mental health specialist, which is category 3, and that then there's an infant or early childhood family specialist, which is category 2. And I can't remember what the category 1 is called, but childcare teachers would be perfect for applying for endorsement at category 1.
Yeah.
In either infant or early childhood. And what differs is if most of your experience has been birth to 3 or 3 to 5.
Gotcha.
So that's the difference. So you'd go for early childhood if your experience has been 3 to 5, infant if birth to 3. But I do encourage the audience to check out the website if they think that if they have those, if they're in those professions that early intervention providers can apply for endorsement. And what it does is it just it gives you as the provider, certainly not to be looking for, not that we're telling people to get this endorsement in case you go looking for another job, but the employers will see, oh, this person has some specialized training, because a teacher that's worked with third graders, let's say, third graders are usually 7 or 8. They don't have the same experience, training, knowledge, expertise that you need to work with 3 to 5-year-olds. So what this says is, if you get endorsed, it says, I have the expertise, I've been recognized as having specialized expertise and training in this age range.
Right.
And it's a level up for a person, whether it's no matter what level of no matter what category of endorsement. They're not levels, they're categories, because they're not, it doesn't mean that you're more highly endorsed if you're at a 4. It's just you have a different scope of work than someone that's at a category 1.
Yeah. So does it help them understand better, like, let's say, I don't really know all the proper terms for some of this stuff, but let's say for a child who has anger issues or something like that, does it help them understand better cope with children or something?
They have to already have had the training in order to get endorsed.
Gotcha.
So it would show that they have specialized training. Yeah, it would if you knew that your childcare teacher had endorsement in early childhood and you had a 3-year-old, you would know they have had specialized training and expertise to address early childhood mental health issues.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. No, that's perfect. So as we come to a close today, I wanted to ask you if you've learned anything from being in this field of work, or any special life lessons.
In 31 years of career, yes, I've learned a lot. I think we touched on a couple of them indirectly. And my brain is probably going to go, where did it go? People are doing the best they can.
Yep.
I'm doing the best I can with what I have. You're doing the best you can. Parents are doing the best they can. I think the majority of people, unless they have a mental illness diagnosis, are doing the best they can.
Right.
And that to understand that people usually do not mean one another harm. They don't mean to be harmful. And we all carry with us our own traumas of the past. We all carry with us our daily stresses, and currently COVID overhead, right? And around us, and that in it of itself is stress and trauma. COVID has been trauma for our nation and for our world, right? So we are all doing the best we can, and to know that people's intentions are generally not evil. And then the other one is that being courageous and being brave is something I've begun to realize that I adopted early on that I didn't realize I did. Somebody pointed it out to me one time. Actually, someone, when I was leaving Children's Hospital after 21 years and coming to the state before I had actually before I'd actually started, said, "Wow, you're brave." And that was just kind of like, really? Is that a brave thing to do? I don't know. I'm just ready for something new, you know. But I think being courageous and brave makes us vulnerable. And I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. Shout out to Brene Brown about vulnerability and all that stuff. But if we don't try, we can't fail, but we also can't succeed.
That's right.
And my husband and I stepped out of our comfort zone and were brave when we adopted Brent.
Yeah.
He was 2.5, was very medically fragile, was on oxygen 24 hours a day, and had been on a ventilator. He wasn't on a ventilator when we got him, but we were told he could die. He could pass away in his sleep by the time he was 5. He may not live to be 5.
My goodness.
And but we stepped out in faith.
Right.
We had strong faith, spiritual faith in God, and we had a strong family and support system, and we believed that it was what we were meant to do. And I've often thought, what if we hadn't been courageous? What if we hadn't been brave?
Right.
All that we would have missed by not adopting him,
Right.
all that he would have missed.
Right.
I mean, you know, I don't believe that we were the only family for him. I believe if we had said no, God would have found another family for him. But we were blessed because we were courageous and brave. And you know, I think there's other times in my life when I've done that and don't regret it. And I think I regret not being brave in a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
That I wonder what if, you know.
Right.
So.
Well, it sounds like he's been a real blessing for y'all, and I know y'all have been a blessing for him and his mom, and probably an inspiration to so many other people.
Yeah,
I love that story.
Yeah, we he reunited with his family. I kept in touch with her. I knew her because he was a patient of mine at Children's. So, and he wanted to meet her when he was about 16, and so I reached out to her, and they've been Facebook friends. He goes to he's been to parties of theirs, and she came to his graduation from high school, and we text each other occasionally.
Yeah.
So so it's all good. I just say he has a bigger family.
Oh, yeah, that's really sweet. Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you? And then we'll also put it in the comments.
Yeah, sure. So I can give my phone number or my email address, Jane, Jane .Duer, D as in David, UER, @mh.alabama.gov.
Okay.
And you want my phone number?
Sure.
205-478-4756.
4756. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think a member of the community could benefit from hearing?
We've talked about a lot.
We sure have. You've covered a lot of good stuff.
My favorite 80s movie. You never got to that.
So what's your favorite 80s movie? Do you have one?
Karate Kid. Number 1,
Kid.
the first one, Karate Kid. Yeah. I was an 80s teenager. So.
Yeah, we had a fun discussion about Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
So
we love Cobra Kai.
Yeah, if you have Netflix, check it out.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
This was so much fun.
It's been a pleasure.
So we can just wave. You can wave bye to your camera. Bye, everybody.